Yeah, we didn't. It looks like we're not going to get the fruits of the labor of Tyree Jackson going forward. All right. Do we have Randy Mueller ready to join us? Former
Yeah, there he
NFL
is.
executive
Yeah.
and head of MuellerFootball.com, podcast host for The Athletic. Mr. Mueller, how you been? How's your offseason going?
Doing great. Good to be back with you guys. Always good to see a couple gray-haired guys on here like me, you know?
Yeah, we got that. We got that. You got too much of that. But you're rocking the Seattle Sea Dragons gear. I see that. You guys are having a great season in the XFL, second best record behind DC, who was undefeated. I always want, as a personnel guy, is it fun to sort of start from scratch? You never get to do that in the NFL. You get to build this team from scratch, and you're one of the best teams in that league.
Well, it is. It's very satisfying. It's been an awesome experience, especially when you can do it with coaches and people who you have had affiliation with. Our head coach is Jim Haslett. Our offensive coordinator, June Jones. Our defensive coordinator is Ron Zook. All guys that I've worked with in the past. So it is fun to build it from scratch and kind of build it with the vision of what you're going to do schematically on both sides of the ball. So that part's been really cool. You're right, John. You don't get to do that in the NFL. When you take over an NFL team, and I've been lucky enough to do that 3 times, you're kind of stuck with what you got. You might be able to swap out a third of the roster, that first couple years, but you have salary implications. You've got other mistakes or other issues to deal with that were there prior to you getting the job, and part of the reason you get one of those NFL jobs. So this is starting with a clean slate. Now, I've done this 3 times in the last 4 years, so I'm not sure I would recommend that. But I will say this, every NFL GM, if they could do this, it would make them a better GM at the NFL level. It has definitely taught me a lot. And the art of team building is not something you can duplicate. I mean, it's not something you can go out and practice in the yard, and it's not fantasy football. So I have learned a ton going through this, even after 35 years in the NFL. It's taught me a lot of decision-making, processing, a lot of things that, again, I have no desire to go back to the NFL, but if I did, I would implement some of these things that we've used in building these teams for these spring leagues.
All right, along those lines of NFL general managers, how many calls do you get a week from, if not GMs, scouts, assistant general managers, and NFL executive tied to an NFL team now that says, "Yeah, Randy, give me the real skinny. Give me the backstory to this player." How many guys are trying to pick your brain about guys either on your squad or any of the other players in the league?
I'll be honest with you; those calls have not come, Jody Mack. At
None.
This point, they have not come. But I would say this: if I were a GM in the NFL, I would not reach out until the season was close to ending. I just think, and I think it's a respect factor from the NFL guys. They know you've built a team and you're in the middle of a season, and they don't want to bog down what the process you have going is. I will get those calls without a doubt. I'll get calls from my buddies, from coaches. Coach Haslett will get them. June will get them. Everybody will get those calls, but they won't come until later in the season. We're through 6 weeks. We have a 10-game season and 2 games in the playoffs. I'll be honest. I think we probably have a dozen guys that belong in NFL camps, and I can pinpoint 3 or 4 that I think would really press to make an NFL roster. But I think the respect factor of the NFL guys understanding that we got to get through our season before they can get their hands on these guys is really why we haven't heard from people on a daily basis.
By the way, for those in Philadelphia who don't remember, Jim Haslett almost was the Eagles coach in '99. The Eagles, it worked out pretty well for Philadelphia. They went with Andy Reid. Jim was very close to getting the Eagles job.
Yep.
I just wanted to mention that he's been a great coach for a long time. Your backup quarterback, Ben DiNucci, I want to bring this up. He's been, the most explosive quarterback in the XFL, I would call it. People remember him from Dallas. And you go back, Randy, obviously. I think about NFL. Well, it was Europe. It was the World League of American Football first.
Yep.
And I think about guys like Brad Johnson and Jake Delhomme and Kurt Warner, how much it helped them. I always thought the quarterback position, even more than any other position, to get better, you got to play.
Yep.
And I don't care if it's the XFL, CFL, USFL. Now, there's exceptions. Aaron Rodgers sat for 3 years and became Aaron Rodgers. But how much do you think that is a personnel guy that quarterbacks nothing like live reps?
Yeah, it's imperative, and I agree 100%. And I've preached to the NFL, really front office guys that I've talked to in the league office for years, that once the developmental league went away, once the World League, once all of that NFL Europe went away, it was hard to develop quarterbacks, because you're right. I've been around many of them who you watch them in practice every day, and that's great. That's one thing. But there's nothing like live reps when the lights are brightest, playing under real bullets flying, to find out who can step up and who can't. I've been around some great practice players who couldn't cover anything or play in a game, and vice versa. I've been around some guys who practice bad, but really were gamers. And so I agree with you. I'm surprised that the NFL, and I know that it's an arduous process of developing players, but I'm surprised that they haven't hooked on to one of these spring leagues yet and kind of made it like that and sent us. See, we used to, John, send players from the NFL. We'd send 6 or 8 guys every year to NFL Europe, and we could get development out of them. Shoot, we sent John Kitten, another quarterback, to throw in that mix of with the names you've mentioned. And it was a great developmental grounds. And I thought that the NFL over all these years have lost by not having an NFL Europe or a spring league tied to their roster development, especially now. Think about it, guys. There's 16 guys on an NFL practice squad, 16 guys. If I'm an NFL GM, I would love to send 8 or 10 of those guys to go play football instead of hanging around our place lifting weights in February and March. They can get a lot more out of their bang for their buck as development as players if they go play. So, we'll see. Hopefully there'll be some connection. I know our league, the XFL, has some shirt tail connections on other parts of the game, whether it's rules, officiating, some other things that the NFL has got its eye on. I think player development is something that is imperative for the league, and you hit the nail on the head, especially when it comes to quarterbacks.
Randy, I want to go down the ex-general manager road with you, because every year in the NFL, you have different spots on the calendar. You look at that. This is what the team is trying to accomplish. We're in a version now of at least free agency 3. The big guys got picked off, then the next level get picked off, and now you're kind of picking through the bargain basement things. So the attention is changed to the draft. We're less than a month away from the start of the NFL draft. A month out of from the draft, as a general manager, what are you doing? How much are you on the phone with your scouts every single day? When do you officially put your first board up and start to position guys around? How does the time frame of the draft work out after you've gotten the majority of your free agent work done?
Well, you've already done that work with your scouts in most cases.
They've already got a board, is what you're telling me.
No doubt. They would come in February, and we would stack a board before we even went to the combine in Indianapolis from your personnel angle. After that, then you have the combine, you have the pro days, and you have your coach's assessment to work into that worksheet that you've started in February. So you have what is semblance of a draft board then. Now there'll be some tweaking of it, but there won't be a lot of major moves for players. That's why I get a kick out of a lot of media folks say, "Oh, this guy's a fast rising player." Well, there's no fast risers. We have had a dossier built for the last 2 years on these players. Yeah. If they fast rising, it's because you didn't know about them. That's what I'd like to say, because the NFL guys
I try to tell everybody all the time, Randy, that just means we're getting more information.
That's right. That's exactly right. The information is disseminated out now to some of those who didn't know it before. So that part of it is happening now. The pro days are going on, but you're really sitting down with your coaches now and fine-tuning a group of players at each position that we can target. But to double back on what you said initially with regard to free agency, Jody, that's still a factor. You say these are third-tier free agents, but here was my thinking all along, and I think most guys still use this. Your signings of players right now are to places that give you options then on draft day to not have to select a need. We're going to sign 3 or 4 guys to 1-year contracts that are veteran guys. Now that frees us up in round 4, 5, and 6 to pick the best available players, so we can be true to our process. That's the other reason I wanted to always have a board set in February. I wanted to put that up against what's there in free agency and work them together and use one to supplement the other and vice versa. So it's all a giant process in NFL GM's minds. They've got about 15 balls they're juggling at all times. And it's only gotten more hectic with the way trades are made now and the way you can move some cap money around. Now, as part of trades, you guys have seen it, teams are willing to pay salary to get more in compensatory or from compensation from other teams. So it's becoming more NBA-like, more Major League Baseball-like, and I don't think that's bad for the game at all.
Yeah, I think I've heard it 3,000 times over the years, Randy, from people like you. Talent is the worst evaluator. That need is the worst talent evaluator of professional sports. So,
most teams make more mistakes because they're trying to fill a depth chart or trying to fill a need than anything else.
Yeah.
And I think I've been around it. We've all been around it where teams will do something. And I remember saying, whoa, we just passed on about 15 names on our board that were above this guy that we've spent all year really lining up to fill a need. So you end up filling a need with a bunch of average players and you skip the better players on your board. And that happens in the NFL still to this day.
Yeah, it's tough. And, because of what's going on in the league right now, I want to tap into your GM hat about something a little bit different, and that's about agents and dealing with agents, and more importantly, dealing with players that don't have agents, because Lamar Jackson, and that has become a situation where, look, I mean, you can blame Baltimore, you can talk about how good Lamar is as a player, and he's a great player, but more comes into it than player X is better than player Y, and say, we got to go get that guy. There's budgets, there's plans, there's all these things that you've set into place. How difficult as a GM is it to deal with somebody who's negotiating for themselves?
Well, it's really difficult. In fact, I'm convinced that is a major stumbling stone with why Lamar hasn't received the action that he probably thought he would. It's one thing to negotiate with a employer that you've been with for 4 years that you kind of know and trust. It's another that once the Ravens put this tag on him and this road was mapped out, it's another to negotiate with 5 or 6 teams on multi-leveled complex deals. I would only say this in regard to myself, and you draw from it what you wish. I've negotiated contracts my whole life. I've done hundreds, literally maybe even thousands of contracts. I think if I were negotiating a contract for myself, I would still hire an agent for me to do that, because none of us are smarter than all of us. And I would do it from a wisdom standpoint that I want the help around me to bring me more information than I can acquire myself. The negotiation part, I'll be involved in that. But I've done hundreds of these deals, and I don't want to be the only supplier of intel and information when it comes to negotiating one of these deals, because it's multi-leveled. And again, that comes from a negotiator who's done it his whole life in the shark-infested world of the NFL. So I don't know how this kid can do it. I really don't.
Love the phrase, none of us is smarter than all of us. That no truer words were ever spoken. All right, I got another negotiating question for you. This offseason, the Eagles are going to try and get a deal done with Jalen Hurts. And Howie Roseman spoke about it plenty, that it's great when you've got a rookie quarterback waiting for you. And it's also great to know you've eventually got to pay that rookie quarterback because he's gone to the level that Jalen Hurts has. Who's the guy that you negotiated a contract with that you loved it because he was a great player for you and you were looking forward to paying him, but it also scared the bejesus out of you because you knew it was going to be big bucks and eat up a big portion of your salary cap? Which is the biggest, the negotiation that had you losing sleep more than any other?
Well, I've never had a Jalen Hurts, so I'll credit the Eagles for exactly at the end of the day finding what we all are looking for, and has developed into a great player. And the money that these guys make now has changed the landscape for doing what you said. I can only equate it to a couple guys in my mind, and we had it in Seattle years ago with Joey Galloway, which ended up being a trade to the Cowboys instead of signing a multi-year deal with us. I remember this, doing an extension with Cortez Kennedy back in the day, and Cortez and I were good friends to his death. He was like my little brother, loved him. But I remember after we agreed and Robert Fraley was his agent. I don't know if you guys remember Robert Fraley, but he was the agent who went down with Payne Stewart in the plane crash years ago. He had a couple players. One was Cortez, and we had negotiated a multi-year, at that time, a lot of $1 million contract. And I remember Cortez sitting in my office across from me, and the sweat was like pouring down his brow. And I found myself kind of hot and sweaty too. And I said, "What's wrong with us? What are we doing?" We were both nervous because this deal was big money at that time. And so it is real. The pressure is real. I didn't have the doubts, I think, that you're referring to, Jody, because I knew Cortez and I knew he was already a great player. It's the ones like this, and these quarterbacks are the best example of that go from making $2 million to $50 million. Those are the ones
that's
I don't miss that part of it. I really don't. You've got to be right. And it was easy to extend Cortez because we kind of knew he was going to be in the Hall of Fame already. But these deals are different than anything I've experienced. So I'm not going to say I know the feeling at all that Howie Roseman has or that somebody would have. Now, I think it's easier to do a Joe Burrow or a Justin Herbert or a more traditional like player at that position because history shows that those guys, you don't have as many doubts. Now, Jalen is a little different in that his road has been different. His development has been different. And the system and his skills are a little different. Now, that can also relate to a guy like Lamar Jackson, too. There's some similarities there as to when a team, where they're willing to go. So each to his own. They know what they're doing in Philadelphia. I think it's, at the end of the day, you can't have regrets about having a quarterback that's deserving of this money. So in the end, I think what'll happen with them, and you guys know more about this than me, I think it'll be a deal that comes in a little under where people thought, but the narrative will be, I'm going to do what's right for the team. I want to get more players with it. It'll be the Tom Brady approach, and he'll be redoing this thing every 2 or 3 years. So the guarantees really won't matter. Like Lamar wants to stand on the hill of fully guaranteed deals. His deal is going to be fully guaranteed. It just won't optically serve the purpose that he wants. Jalen Hurts is going to have a fully guaranteed deal too, just like Dak Prescott has, just like anybody else who signs these deals where the guarantees are in excess of $130 million.
Yeah, Joe Banner's brought this up a couple times, and I thought it was interesting, Randy. He said, if he were one of these quarterbacks, whether it's Jalen Hurts, you mentioned Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, he would want a shorter term contract because now that we have the new TB deal, it's in place. You could see the escalation. You could see where the salary cap's going to go. And if Jalen Hurts or any of those guys sign for an average annual value, as you point out, isn't a big deal. It's the guarantees. But if they lock themselves in, like the Patrick Mahomes deal, I mean, that's the most team-friendly deal in the NFL right now, honestly. And it looks so massive at the time, whatever it was, 10 years at the time, to astronomical. Should these guys want to sign 2-3 year deals that are fully guaranteed, get back on the market, or is that financial security? Where do you come down on that fence, so to speak?
Well, here's the thing that I always entered into, and it doesn't seem like players are affected by this as much as they were back in the day. They're one play away from some kind of career-ending injury.
Yeah.
So you have to have that protection and, in my opinion, the security of a long-term deal. So I don't know what the happy medium is there. If I'm a team, I'm looking for a longer-term deal. I haven't thought it through like Joe. He's way smarter than me, but I want this guy secured for a long time if I can do it. And I want the ability to manipulate that deal in its later years. So we are going to, at some point, sure, have to have some dead cap money. I know that's part of the cost of doing business nowadays, but I want to control that, and I want to be able to manipulate that deal so that we can continue to add players to the mix, but yet not have this guy come free to where we have to put a crazy tag on him of a $50 million cap count. I want to be able to kick the can a little bit, if that makes any sense, to kind of move some money out.
Yeah, that's what Howie does. I mean, when the cap number goes up, that's when the restructure comes.
That's right. Yep.
All right, I'm going to drag you back into a hypothetical NFL general manager question, if that's okay, Randy.
Yep.
A lot was made this last month and certainly this past week about streaming on Amazon on Thursday nights. Thursday night football is what it is. And there was conversations about giving them the ability to flex in games at the end of the season. As it sits right now, all they're giving them is the ability to use the team more than once, that the better teams are going to be in position to play 2 or maybe even 3 times on a Thursday night. I don't know if they'll go all the way to 3 with teams. That'd be pretty brutal. But if you're a general manager, do you pick up the phone and call the owner before these owners' meetings and go, hey, you got to fight the fight here? Thursday night football sucks. Our players hate it. Our coaches hate it. We understand it's a business, but you got to try and hold the line for us here, Mr. Owner. Or do you just wait for the owner to ask you? Do you not go there because it's not your purview to be talking about billions of dollars that the league is or isn't going to make? How would you handle it if you were a general manager today and something like this was being discussed and you know it's going to have an effect on your team?
Right.
Do you aggressively give your opinion to the owner? Do you wait for him to ask for it?
Well, I definitely would seek him out to advise, that's for sure. I would want to go to bat for our players and for our coaches in this regard, because I'm with you. I don't like where it's headed. I don't like what it does to our players. But even more important than that, I don't like the quality of the product that we see on Thursdays either, because I think it stinks. And you can't tell me that that's quality football. And I'm kind of a perfectionist when it comes to that. Hey, I struggle with the spring league like we have when I'm not getting NFL type results, every day when you watch practice. So when I watch these Thursday night games, sometimes I just shake my head. I really don't want to watch it. And I know it's done for the almighty dollar. I get it. But I'll say this, and this is kind of old man on my porch telling the kids to get off the yard. When Paul
do that every day, Randy.
When Paul Tagliabue and Gene Upshaw were in charge of running our business, I know for a fact that the good of the game was the determining factor in a lot of decisions that they made. I see us now at a place where they don't do things for the good of the game. It's for the almighty dollar. And there's so many people in the league office level and obviously all of ownership, they're determining the bottom line. And I think that at some point, football common sense has to come into play, where they've got to decide some of these things for the best thing to do for the game itself. And I think that's Thursday night. I just don't think it's good for the game, what they're doing. Yeah, they're going to make a few more dollars on it. And maybe they're trying to help Amazon, who, in my opinion, put out a crazy bad product on TV last year in their game analysis and everything else that they do. I think that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother show. But I think they're trying to boost their ratings. They're trying to boost them up. And Amazon's might be saying, hey, we need better quality teams. When I think if Amazon could do a better job of telling the story, it might go a long ways toward people watching as well.
It's a good point. At Randy Mueller _ on Twitter. Make sure you put the _ follow Randy there. Former NFL Executive of the Year, Personnel Director of the Seattle Sea Dragons. Good luck there. We hope you knock off the DC Defenders. I guess they're the best team in the XFL right now, undefeated.
Yep.
The Athletic Football GM Pod with my buddy Mike Sando does a great job there as well. Too long. We don't have enough time to get to your whole resume, Randy. But
hey.
Last one from me, because it's a big thing here. I don't know why. And this is, I tell Jody this, and I want to run it by you. The so-called tush push. The Eagles became sort of the rage of the NFL with this sort of pushing the quarterback, and the quarterback sneak were so effective. I kind of look at this counterintuitively, Randy. I think it would be positive if they would have banned that. They're not going to. It's still going to be in there because Jalen Hurts is going to be good at it anyway. I think the rest of the league is going to catch up. They already started last year. They're going to start putting guys in the backfield, pushing their quarterbacks. I think it becomes less an advantage for Philadelphia. Do you think I'm crazy? And get into your original point of good for the game. Is that play good for the game? Because it's not the most aesthetic play in the world.
Yeah. I would say this, and I'm far from a football purist. I hate it. Absolutely hate it. I think it's embarrassing for our game, to be honest with you. I think the pulling, pushing, all that is is not part of football. I don't know who thought this was a good idea. I'd like to hear their theory on it, whether it's the competition committee or some of the people that put this rule into place. I don't think it's great for player safety either. I think it's a one big rugby scrum, which really isn't part of any strategy, isn't part of any design. I think it kind of dumbs down what could be a really exciting play on fourth down, and makes it into an extra point per se. I don't like it, and I wish they'd do away with it, but that's just my personal feeling. I aesthetically believe, like you do, that I think it looks bad. I don't understand the positives from it. I'd like to hear that. I'll adhere to this theory. There must be something that I don't know, guys, that the knowing of which would change everything, because I don't see it right now.
Like you and Peter King have the same opinion. As soon as a quarterback gets hurt, everybody's going to change their opinion. Yeah. Oh, my God, why didn't we ban it? Why do we? Yeah. No one got hurt last year. So that's why I think the competition committee said, yeah, we can't get to 24 votes. We're not going to. Oh, they'll get to 24 votes if a key quarterback gets hurt.
In a hurry.
Year. Guaranteed. Yeah. Randy, great stuff. We appreciate it. Whenever you jump on, thanks for doing so today. We're definitely going to get you on before the season gets underway. Thanks for doing it.
Thanks, guys. Enjoyed catching up.
Thanks,
Randy. That is Randy Mueller. Check out his podcast on the Athletic NFL podcast. Mike Sando is his co-host.
Mike Sando. Football GM podcast. Randy does a great job.
I've never seen the pod. I like Sando as a writer. I think he's a great writer. So I'm sure if he and Randy are doing a podcast together, it's got to be great. All right, Johnny Mac, Jody Mac coming back. We only got time for one question, and I can tell you what it's going to be ahead of time, because I was a little surprised by what Randy said. The Thursday night Amazon broadcast, not the what does Thursday night do, short week, long week, injuries, players' reaction, blah, blah. No, just the broadcast itself. I've got an opinion on it. I want to get yours. Johnny Mac, Jody Mac coming back here next on Birds 365.